Heartwarming story, how a man's piano dream for a meal revealed an incredible musical legend. Jake stood in his cluttered garage, where the smell of oil mixed with the distant echo of clanking tools. The world outside was painted in shades of gray, as if the Rust Belt town had settled into a state of stagnant despair. Bills piled up on the counter, and the disquiet of the community hung in the air. Yet, in that dim light, as he wiped the grease from his hands, there was one thing that sparkled the music deep within his heart. Memories of his grandmother, the renowned pianist, whispered through his mind, guiding him toward a dream that felt impossibly far away. As the community festival approached, Jake felt a flicker of hope. It was an annual event designed to raise money for local veterans, and he believed that if he could perform, he could win enough money to feed his family for a month. But the weight of judgment from the townsfolk sat heavy on his shoulders. They saw him as a mechanic, a man defined by his grease-stained overalls and the weighty burdens of life, not as someone with talent. Would they laugh at a dreamer beneath a battered exterior? With support from his wife, Clara, whose unwavering faith in him felt like a warm embrace, Jake ventured into a dusty thrift store. There, he stumbled upon an old piano, its keys yellowed and its wood chipped. He hesitated. Would it play? But as he lifted the lid, a wave of nostalgia washed over him. His grandmother's smiling face seemed to appear, urging him onward. As his fingers danced over the keys for the first time, he felt a spark. The notes rang out and kindled a flame in him that had been dormant for far too long, yet, just as Jake's dreams began to swell, the ground beneath him shook when Clara fell ill. The dread of uncertainty clawed at his insides. Should he devote his time to his family's needs, or chase this melody that promised a brighter future? The festival loomed like a deadline, a chasm between possibility and the doggedness of reality. He wrestled with his choices. Would he sacrifice everything for a fleeting hope? The day of the festival arrived, and Jake stood backstage, heart racing like a revving engine. The chatter of the crowd seeped through the curtain, filling his chest with a tightness that felt almost suffocating. What if they judged him? What if failure laughed back at him? As the announcer called his name, Jake clutched the keys, breathing in deeply. Then, he began to play. Each note pulsed through his veins, and the audience fell silent, transfixed. He poured his heart into every chord, blending his struggles with melodies that echoed throughout the hall. And as he played, he felt his grandmother's spirit enveloping him like a warm hug, pushing him forward. The music transformed into a story, his story a tapestry of pain, hope, and defiance that filled the room with vulnerability and resilience. But, just as applause began to resonate, Jake wondered, would this moment forever change how the town viewed him, or would it sink back into the shadows like so many dreams lost? The crowd's reaction hung in the air, thick with emotion, waiting to burst forth. Would his personal triumph be the spark that ignited change, or would he once again return to being the overlooked mechanic? As the last notes of his performance faded into the air, the silence in the room felt alive, almost electrified. Jake's heart thundered in his chest. He could practically feel the weight of every eye in the audience, some curious, some skeptical, and others, he hoped, filled with admiration. He glanced at Clara, who stood just at the edge of the stage, her eyes glistening with tears of pride. In that moment, he felt invincible. Then it happened. The audience erupted into applause, a thunderous wave of sound that washed over him. Each clap felt like a cheer straight from their hearts. Jake's mind raced, a whirlwind of emotions and thoughts battling for dominance. Did they really see him? Did they understand? Jake! A voice called out from the front row, a man with a beard and bright blue eyes, who Jake recognized from around town. You've got a gift. We need you at the next festival. More voices joined in, shouting encouragement, and he felt the weight of his fears lift, replaced by something powerful: acceptance. Hope filled his lungs, pushing out the anxiety he had grappled with for weeks. For the first time, he wasn't just the local mechanic, he was Jake, the musician. But as the applause faded, a new wave of worry washed over him. Clara's illness still loomed like a dark cloud. he couldn't ignore the reality that awaited him. They still needed to pay bills and put food on the table. Would this moment of triumph be diminished by the harshness of life waiting just outside the venue doors? After his performance, he stepped off the stage, adrenaline still coursing through him. He was met with clamoring townsfolk, congratulating him, shaking his hand, offering words of encouragement. "I've always believed you could do it," said Ms. Jenkins, their neighbor. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and he felt warmth spreading through him, but as people drew nearer, Jake's throat tightened. He needed to tell them about Clara. "Listen," he began, "I'm grateful for all the support, but my wife she's been sick." Before he could finish, the man from the front row spoke up, "We can help." Just like that, the room shifted. Someone else chimed in, "Let's set up a fundraiser, a benefit concert." The idea took root and spread like wildfire. The crowd buzzed, the spirit was alive, and Jake felt an urgency ignite within. As Clara approached, the glow of appreciation mixed with the concern in her eyes. "You were incredible, Jake," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "But we can't count on others forever." Jake raised his hands to quiet the crowd, gratitude and determination swirling inside him. "Thank you all so much. We'll figure this out together." But deep inside, uncertainty nagged at him. Could he really turn this moment into something sustainable? Could he keep the music alive while nursing his family through dark times? With hope and dread intertwined, he realized the next chapter of his story was just beginning. "Are you ready for what's next?" he asked Clara, heart heavy yet hopeful. Her eyes met his filled with faith and the fierce resilience that had always sparked something within him. As they exchanged a hopeful glance, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the start. In a place where dreams often faded, was he finally ready to claim his place? Would their struggles bring the community together, or would the weight of life pull them apart? The next festival loomed ahead, not just as a challenge, but as an opportunity, one that might change everything, for him and for Clara. Would he rise to meet it, or would he falter? The days that followed were a blur of excitement and anxiety. Jake could hardly sleep, his mind spinning with plans and possibilities. Each morning, he would wake to the sound of Clara's soft breaths, and for a brief moment, everything felt perfect. But as he lay in bed, he couldn't shake the reality creeping back in. Clara needed medication, and their bills were piling up. Jake threw himself into practice, pouring every ounce of emotion into the keys of his piano. The melodies flowed through him, sweet and haunting. But with every song he composed, doubt nagged at the back of his mind. Would his music really help them? Or was he just setting himself up for disappointment? He spent afternoons at the local park, strumming his guitar for anyone who passed by. A few neighbors stopped to listen, their faces lighting up with smiles. "You're gonna be famous," one old man chuckled, clapping him on the back. Jake chuckled with him, but inside, he wondered if famous was what he wanted. What he needed was to bring Clara comfort and security, not just cheers and applause. Clara watched this all unfold, her strength shining like a beacon. She would sit by the window, the sunlight catching her hair strands, her usually pale cheeks flushed with color. Each melody that drifted toward her lifted her spirits, but behind her smile was a concern that echoed in Jake's heart. One afternoon, she squeezed his hand as he played his latest song. "This is beautiful, Jake," she whispered. "But don't forget to take care of yourself too." He nodded, but deep down he felt as if the weight of two lives rested on his shoulders. Clara's voice was a sweet reminder of why he had to keep fighting. The night of the fundraiser arrived, and the town hall was buzzing with excitement. Jake stepped onto the stage, his heart racing. It was packed, families, friends, and faces he barely knew, all here to lend their support. The sight of Clara sitting front and center, looking so proud and hopeful, steadied him. He poured himself into each song, fingers flying across the keys while his heart poured out in every note. Each time he paused, the crowd cheered him on, their enthusiasm building. Jake closed his eyes, losing himself in the music. The worries faded, leaving only pure connection, the kind that wrapped around him like a warm hug, but as he played, a flicker of panic erupted in his chest. What if the night didn't raise enough money? What if it all fell apart? Clara's illness was precarious, and he feared that fame wouldn't pay the bills. The thought sent a wave of anxiety crashing over him that almost made him falter. He took a deep breath and finished the last song. The applause was deafening, a tidal wave of support that felt as though it might carry him away. When he took a bow, his eyes locked onto Clara's, and he saw it, the pride, the love, the faith they held in each other. But just as the applause began to fade, someone from the crowd stepped forward, Clara's doctor, Dr. Lee, who had been watching from the side. The murmurs grew as she approached the microphone. "I'd like to say something," she announced, her voice clear and steady. "I've seen how hard Clara has been fighting, and how dedicated Jake is to supporting her. Jake's heart raced. This was unexpected. What could she say that would change everything?" As the audience fell silent, he wondered if this moment might alter the course of everything they had worked towards. Would it be a turning point or another challenge to face? He held tightly to his breath, awaiting her words, ready for whatever came next. Dr. Lee's voice cut through the silence like a sharp wind, strong and unwavering despite the emotional current swirling around the room. "Tonight, we gather not just to raise funds, but to honor the profound love that exists between Jake and Clara. Their journey together is not just a story of illness, but a testament to hope, resilience, and the healing power of music." Jake's insides tightened. He never expected his personal trials to be laid bare for the town to see. He couldn't help but glance toward Clara, whose eyes shone with unshed tears. Would this help? He wanted to believe that this evening held more than just applause. Maybe it would reach into hearts, coaxing generosity and kindness to the surface. "I am honored to be Clara's doctor, but more importantly, I am honored to witness the love between them every day," Dr. Lee continued. "In addition to the support you have shown here tonight, I urge you all to consider donating in whatever capacity you can. I know it may seem like a small gesture, but every little bit helps us provide the treatment she so desperately needs." A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd, and Jake felt an unexpected surge of gratitude. This was real. They saw Clara not just as a patient, but as a person so deeply loved and cherished. He could see the community leaning in, their hearts opening. As Dr. Lee shared factual details about Clara's condition, Jake felt himself retreating into the shadows of uncertainty. His emotions oscillated wildly, pride in Clara's fight mixed with fear of what lay ahead. He wished to convey her strength, to shout from rooftops how fierce she was in the face of this darkness. But the words wouldn't come. "Tonight, let us give energy to the power of music as well. I would like to initiate a donation match," Dr. Lee announced, a determined light in her eyes. "For every dollar donated in the next 10 minutes, I will personally match it." Gasps and cheers erupted. People began fishing through their pockets, pulling out cash. Even a couple of folks from the back began to make their way to the stage, their footsteps echoing in rhythm with Jake's pounding heart. He stood there, holding the moment close. It was incredible how the stars seemed to align, how every note he played echoed back to them. With renewed purpose, he slipped back to the piano. This time, he played a melody from the depths of his soul, a rhythmic conversation between love and hope, space and silence. The music floated through the hall, intertwining with the gathering support. People were dancing, some were swaying, and with Clara's face illuminated in the spotlight, Jake felt the weight ease off his shoulders. The crowd was transforming into a wave of humanity, flowing inward toward their story. Minutes later, the donation box stood full, overflowing with hope and determination. "We've done it!" Someone shouted triumphantly, the energy lifting everyone's spirits as applause erupted once again. But in the back of his mind lingered the question, would it be enough? Finally, he looked toward Dr. Lee, who returned to the mic. "I have one final surprise before we wrap up tonight," she said, a mischievous grin dawning on her face. I think Clara would love to hear a little something special from a close friend of hers. Jake's pulse quickened as Dr. Lee nodded toward the wings of the stage, signaling someone with a wave. A moment later, the crowd parted, and there stood Clara's sister, Emily, who had come in with a guitar slung over her shoulder. Clara's face lit up as if a light had burst inside her. Jake watched the magic unfold, a blend of apprehension and joy swirling within as he realized just how much this night would change everything. As Emily stepped forward, her eyes zeroed in on Clara, Jake felt a familiar unraveling of emotions. What were they about to reveal together? He wasn't sure if he was ready, but in that split second, he knew one thing: this night was only the beginning. Emily moved to the center of the stage, her guitar resting against her hip like an old friend. The crowd quieted, anticipation hanging thick in the air. Jake felt the weight of every heart beating around him, synchronized with the unsteady rhythm of his own. Clara's eyes sparkled with something deeper than happiness. It was a connection that spoke volumes without a single word exchanged. "Hey, everyone." Emily's voice was warm and familiar. "I know Clara's been through a lot, but she's never alone in this fight. We're all in it together." Her fingers found the strings, and she strummed softly, letting the notes pour into the room like a gentle stream. Clara's smile widened, illuminating the dim hall like the first light of dawn. Jake's heart swelled, and he shifted in his seat, feeling the need to support this moment. As the music enveloped them, Emily's voice filled the spaces between the notes. She sang a song that Clara had listened to countless times as a child. The lyrics felt like a blanket wrapped around Jake's shoulders, reminding him of simpler times when life wasn't weighed down by sickness or fear. Clara swayed gently, closing her eyes, lost in the familiarity of the tune, and Jake couldn't help but admire her strength. "Every moment matters," Emily sang, her voice rising above the chorus of harmony. Those words resonated, echoing in Jake's soul. He felt a tug of emotion, hope battling against the backdrop of pain. The crowd swayed in rhythm, shoulders bobbing like a gentle tide as smiles spread like wildfire. Jake's fingers danced over the piano keys, joining in on the chorus. It felt like an unspoken agreement, a bond forming among the music, Clara, and the community that surrounded them. He could see her breathing more easily, each breath lighter than before. As Emily continued, Jake caught sight of Clara's sister taking ownership of that moment, pouring herself into the song. There was bravery there, the kind that empowered not just Clara but everyone present. It was a reminder that even in darkness, joy could be found if only they embraced it. The song climbed to its peak, and people began to clap along, their hands creating a vibrant rhythm that harmonized perfectly with the melody. Tears streamed down Clara's cheeks, but they were different now, beauty and love mingling in the air. Jake's heart filled with gratitude, a strong wind swirling between courage and vulnerability. When the final chord faded, the audience erupted into applause, a wave of support crashing against the stage. Clara's laughter burst forth, filled with a life that seemed to reach everyone in that room. As Emily stepped forward to hug her sister tight, Jake felt an overwhelming sense of purpose wash over him. This was the kind of night that could change everything, but as the applause dimmed, that familiar knot of worry twisted in Jake's stomach. The reality of their situation echoed loud in his mind. This was just a single night. What would tomorrow bring? How could they carry this magic into the next day? Dr. Lee stepped back to the microphone, her eyes shimmering with excitement. "Thank you all for your incredible support. The power of community is immense, but Clara still needs us." Jake held his breath, anticipation hanging heavy, as Dr. Lee continued. "In light of tonight's impact, I'm working on something special to keep this momentum alive." Jake's heart raced. What could be more than this? What did Dr. Lee have planned? He glanced at Clara, her hopeful gaze holding his. Even in uncertainty, one thing remained clear: together they would face whatever came next. Would they manage to weave this moment into the fabric of their reality, or would the threads of hope unravel? Only time would tell. The echoes of applause began to fade, but the warmth lingered in the air, a comforting reminder that even the most challenging days could be illuminated with love and support. As Emily and Clara embraced, the crowd began to disperse slowly, murmurs of excitement and hope weaving through the audience. Jake watched Clara and her sister, taking a mental snapshot of the moment. It was sacred, like catching a glimpse of sunlight on a cold winter's day. Clara turned towards him, her eyes sparkling with renewed energy. "Did you see that?" she exclaimed, her voice vibrating with joy. "They really came together for me. I never thought this would feel so amazing." Jake smiled, his heart swelling. "You deserve every bit of this, Clara. Look around, look at how they care." He gestured to the faces still lingering, chatting with one another, sharing stories and laughter, their hearts connected by the music they had shared. But just as quickly as the joy bloomed, doubts began to gnaw at Jake again. He worried about Clara's health, about what tomorrow might bring. The excitement of the night was like a sparkler, their brief flash illuminating the night before it vanished. "Hey," he said gently, squeezing her hand, "I know tonight was special, but what happens when the music stops? What if we can't keep this going?" The weight of his words hung between them, a shared fear overshadowing the laughter. Clara's smile faltered for just a moment, her determination flickering. "I don't know," she admitted. "But I want to try, Jake. I want to feel this hope." There was a fierce resolve in her voice that reignited something inside him. As Clara and Jake stood there, Emily approached them, her presence vibrant, like a warm sunbeam. "What a night, huh?" she said, grinning ear to ear. "But we can't stop here." Jake raised an eyebrow, interest piqued. "What do you mean?" "I have an idea," Emily announced, practically glowing with excitement. "Let us organize weekly musical gatherings. A chance for everyone to contribute their talents. We can keep the spirit alive and inspire each other." Clara's eyes lit up. "That sounds incredible. It could be a place for people to connect, to heal." Jake felt a tiny flicker of hope igniting within him. "And we could invite local musicians, get the whole community involved." "Exactly." Emily nodded, eager now. "We can even set up fundraisers to help with medical costs and maybe even some workshops. Just imagine." The vision of a musical community blossoming in his mind felt like brief moments of sunshine piercing through heavy clouds. Yet, doubts still gnawed at him. But will people really come together like this again? Will they care enough? Clara squeezed his hand reassuringly. "They showed us tonight that they care. We can harness that. Let us give them the chance." Jake took a deep breath as the weight of uncertainty mixed with an exhilarating rush of possibility. "Okay," he said, newfound determination fueling his voice. "Let us do this." Just as they started to sketch out their plans, the sound of distant laughter floated into the hall. It was heartfelt, a sign that even in uncertainty, joy could still thrive. "I can already see it," Emily said, catching Clara's gaze. "This is just the beginning." Jake felt it too, a thrill rushing through him. But a question lingered: could they sustain this momentum? Would the community rally behind them as they ventured into uncharted territory? As the last traces of applause echoed through his mind, the night felt heavy with potential, holding its breath. Tomorrow would test their resolve, and the path ahead was still shadowed in doubt. But together, they decided to step into the light. What if the next song they played could change everything? The sun rose the next day, casting a golden glow through Clara's window, illuminating her room with an inviting warmth. She stretched and blinked against the light, the excitement of last night trickling back into her thoughts like the first drops of spring rain. "Weekly gatherings," she murmured to herself, a smile creeping onto her face. Just imagining a group of people sharing music together filled her with hope and purpose. But as she sat up, the weight of reality returned. She could feel an ache deep in her bones, a stark reminder of her fragile condition. Meanwhile, Jake was pacing back and forth in his small apartment, the energy from the previous night still coursing through him. He scribbled down ideas for the music gatherings, each note igniting his dreams and fears. The thought of Clara leading such an initiative was exciting, but what if it all fell flat? What if she became too sick to continue? Suddenly, there was a knock at his door. "Jake! You awake?" Emily's voice called through the wood. He opened the door to find her standing there, beaming, with a folder in one hand. "I couldn't sleep. I just had to get started." Emily rushed in and spread out her plans on his kitchen table. "We can start by creating a flyer, letting people know what we're doing. We could even set a date for the first gathering." As she spoke, Jake felt the spark in her words. "Right, and we should list some local musicians who might want to perform," he suggested, allowing himself to be pulled into her excitement. They began brainstorming, their conversation flowing like a well-composed melody, each idea building on the last. It felt electric, as if they were crafting something monumental together. Clara joined them an hour later, her energy radiating like sunlight. Her smile seemed brighter than ever, cutting through the lingering worries they shared. "Hey, what have you guys come up with?" "We're just getting started," Emily said, her eyes sparkling. "We want to create a community gathering that feels like a sanctuary, a place to share talents and lift each other up." Clara was animated, her spirit lifting every time they spoke about the gatherings. "Let us set up a schedule, a rotation of different musicians and genres. We can build excitement around each one." Jake watched her, a mixture of admiration and concern flickering in his heart. He knew Clara needed to conserve her energy, and yet, here she was, igniting hope in them all. "Just don't push yourself too hard," he cautioned gently. "Trust me, this fuels me," Clara replied, determination lacing her words. "Music is life. We're going to make this happen." As they continued to plan the first gathering, Jake found himself lost in Clara's enthusiasm. He watched as she encouraged Emily, who was just as fired up, and he felt a sense of unity emerging. The three of them were weaving together threads of hope, laughter, and the kind of music that could heal souls. Once they finished, Emily exclaimed, "This is gonna be big." Jake's heart raced as he thought about everything that lay ahead. Would people really come together? Would they dive into this adventure? "This is just the beginning," Jake echoed, a fire igniting inside him as he squeezed Clara's hand, remembering the laughter they had heard the night before. But then the dark shadow of doubt crept back, as did the question that had haunted him since the start. What if it all falls apart? Clara met his gaze, her eyes brimming with the certainty he longed for. "Then we try again, Jake. Together." With that conviction hanging in the air, they packed their things, ready to share their vision with the world. But even as hope soared, a sudden sharp pang in Clara's chest reminded Jake that they had a difficult road ahead. Would this dream of theirs flourish, or was it destined to be a fleeting moment, like a song that ends too soon? That question lingered as they stepped into the day, unaware that just around the corner, they would encounter challenges that could test everything they built. The day passed and the sun dipped lower in the sky, painting the world in hues of orange and pink. Clara, Jake, and Emily met again at their favorite coffee shop, the distinct aroma of roasted beans wrapping around them like a familiar hug. Clara had arrived early, her fingers tapping nervously against the table as she glanced at her phone for the time. The thought of the gathering was a whirlwind in her mind, weaving dreams and worries together. She needed this to work, for herself, for Jake, and for Emily. But an underlying fear nudged at her, threatening to spread like a crack in a fragile surface. Jake and Emily burst in, laughter trailing behind them. They looked like a pair of excited kids, and Clara's heart lifted a little at the sight. "Hey there, sunshine," Emily chirped, sliding into the seat across from her. "Did you bring the flyers?" Clara asked, trying to sound nonchalant but unable to hide the tremor of hope in her voice. "Of course," Jake said, pulling out a stack of brightly colored flyers from his messenger bag. "Look at these." He spread them out, unveiling a design that was lively and inviting, all bold letters and cheerful colors. As they admired the flyers, Clara's heart began to race. This looks amazing. We really did this. Yes, we did. Jake grinned, the triumphant glow in his eyes matching Clara's rising excitement. But amidst the joy, she felt a twinge of reality grip her. Would she be able to see this through? Just then, the chatter in the coffee shop rose, and an elderly man at the back started playing an old, rusty piano. The song melancholic yet warm wrapped around them, catching everyone's attention. Wow, Emily said slowly, entranced by the music. He's incredible, yeah, Jake nodded, his eyes on the man who seemed lost in the melodies of the past. Memories danced in the corners of Clara's mind. She had loved music as a child, how it could tell stories without needing words. The old man played like he was conjuring ghosts, every note swimming through the air, teasing at heartstrings. Clara felt a familiar ache, the kind that tugged at her soul. Suddenly, tears pricked her eyes. Beautiful, isn't it? Jake whispered softly, just for her. Then, she wondered what if they could include people like him in their gatherings? What if everyone who had music inside them could find a place to share it? Her heart leapt. We have to invite him. He belongs in our dreams too. As if hearing her thoughts, the man's song faded, and he began to pack up. Clara exchanged glances with Jake and Emily, a mutual understanding sparking in the air. They had to reach out. She made her way toward him, her steps unsteady but fueled by hope. Excuse me. She called, voice trembling yet determined. The old man turned, his eyes holding a lifetime of stories. Hi there, he smiled, a warm, wrinkled face lighting up. Enjoying the music? Yes. It's beautiful. We're planning a music gathering, and we'd love for you to play. Clara took a deep breath, half expecting him to turn away. Instead, his brow furrowed thoughtfully. Well, young lady, I haven't played in years. Not in front of others anyway, but you have a gift. She urged, feeling the urgency in her heart. We need that. People need to hear you. A flicker of something crossed his face, fear, hope, maybe even joy. Maybe. The moment hung there, suspended in the air. Clara's heart beat faster, a mix of nerves and excitement. What if he said yes? What if this moment connected them all, binding their dreams into something real? Just then, a sharp pang shot through her chest, a stark reminder of her condition. She faltered, and Jake caught her glance, worry lining his features. But she couldn't give up now. Not when they were finally stepping towards something, not when she felt the tide of change waiting just beyond reach. Please, I believe it's time for your music to come back to life, she whispered, hoping he could see the sincerity in her eyes. That he studied her for a moment longer, and Clara held her breath. Finally, he smiled slowly, all right then. I'll give it a shot. Joy flooded Clara's heart, and she turned to meet Jake and Emily's gazes, each sharing her exhilaration. But as Clara turned back, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. What other challenges lay ahead? What surprises would shake their foundation? With the future dancing just out of reach, the journey was only just starting. Clara's spirit soared as she returned to the table. He said yes, she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Jake and Emily's faces lit up, their joy echoing her own. It felt like they had just conquered a mountain, and the air was thick with possibilities. Okay, so we have our first performer. Emily beamed. We'll have a whole lineup before you know it. Jake's enthusiasm was infectious. Let's talk about how we'll spread the word. Social media? Flyers? Maybe even a little video of the old man playing? Clara felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. They were doing this together. This wasn't just her dream anymore, it was theirs. Yes. We need to capture the spirit of the gathering, make it known. We can show people there's a place for everyone, no matter how far they've drifted from music. Their conversation flowed easily, ideas bouncing from one to another as they filled the air with laughter. The coffee shop buzzed around them, but Clara felt like they had carved their own little universe, one filled with ambition, triumph, and a touch of nostalgia. As they finalized plans for the gathering, Clara's heart swelled with each passing minute. They talked about potential dates, locations, and even how to incorporate different kinds of art into their event. She shared her idea about inviting local artists, poets, anyone willing to unleash creativity. It felt so big yet so intimate at the same time, a community gathering spun from dreams woven into reality. Then, like a curtain being pulled back, the weight of reality returned. A wave of fatigue washed over Clara, and she could feel the familiar thud of her heart echoing in her ears. She took a deep breath, wanting to absorb her friend's energy, but the encroaching exhaustion draped over her like a heavy blanket. "Hey, everything all right?" Jake asked, his brow furrowing as he searched her eyes for answers. Clara plastered on a smile, trying to keep the brightness alive. "Yeah, just excited, I guess. All this is a little overwhelming." Emily nodded with understanding. "We're in this together, Clara. You don't have to carry it all." "Right," Clara said softly, appreciating their unwavering support. It lifted the heavy weight just slightly. Still, a little voice in her head whispered doubts. What if she faltered? What if she couldn't keep up? She tucked those worries away for another time, refusing to let them tangle with the hope that danced in the room. The old man's commitment lingered in her mind. It was one thing to gather their friends and family, it was another to draw strangers into a new community. She would need to reach out, connect with others to weave everyone into this tapestry of sound. As they left the coffee shop that evening, Clara felt a spark of anticipation. She imagined the bustling event filled with laughter, music, and people sharing their own stories. Clara glanced back at the coffee shop, twinges of hope and anxiety mixing within her. What if it all fell apart? What if no one came? But then again, what if it turned into something beautiful, a moment where every note and every heart blended together? She took a deep breath and turned to her friends, determination igniting within her. "Tomorrow, let us hit the streets and start spreading the word." "Count me in," Jake replied, brimming with energy. "Absolutely. I'll handle the social media posts," Emily added, her enthusiasm giving Clara strength. With a renewed sense of purpose, they parted ways, but Clara's heart raced with questions. What stories would they uncover? Would they have the courage to share their dreams? As she made her way home, the weight of her fears mixed with the thrill of possibility. She was on the edge of something monumental, but would that something be as wondrous as she hoped? Only time would tell. The first gathering day dawned bright and hopeful, the sun casting warm rays that seemed to whisper promises of a brighter future. Clara felt giddy with excitement, even as she caught herself anxiously checking the clock. It was an ordinary day, yet it felt extraordinary. She had spent the morning setting up, sprinkling the community center with colorful decorations, posters promoting art and music, and strings of lights that twinkled like stars. Jake arrived, carrying a box filled with instruments and fresh pastries. "Ready for this?" he asked, beaming at her. "More than ready," Clara replied, her heart racing with anticipation and nerves. Together, they began to set up the stage, their laughter weaving through the air, echoing the joy simmering in their hearts. Emily joined them shortly after, her arms laden with flyers and brimming with enthusiasm. "People have started showing up. I can already hear chatter. They're excited," she exclaimed, her eyes wide with delight. Jake laughed, caught in the infectious energy that filled the space. "This is happening. What do we do first?" As the hour approached, the gathering began to draw a crowd. Clara looked around, her breath catching in her throat. Familiar faces greeted her, neighbors, colleagues, even some kids from the community, all converging into a melting pot of shared hope. The old man, his hair wild and scraggly, arrived with his weathered piano music, and something inside Clara swelled with gratitude. "Thank you for being here," she said, her voice tinged with emotion. "You're more than welcome to share your gift." With a nod, he offered a smile that carried years of stories, and immediately the mood shifted. The first musician took to the makeshift stage, a shy young girl with a ukulele. When she began to play, Clara's heart swelled as the crowd erupted into cheers, hands clapping in rhythm with the notes that hung in the air. One by one, the performers followed. Clara felt alive, the energy electric, each song dancing on the waves of enthusiasm that the audience radiated. She caught glimpses of Jake giving encouraging nods and Emily connecting with attendees, pulling them into conversations that brightened faces like flickering candle flames. But as the night drew nearer, Clara felt the flutter of fatigue creeping in, a stark reminder of her fragile condition. What if she couldn't keep this momentum alive? The depths of her worries threatened to pull her back. Suddenly, she heard her name being called, Clara. Pushing through the crowd was a familiar face, Dr. Lee. "You're doing such an incredible job. This community loves you." Tears pricked at the corners of Clara's eyes as she took in the scene, the joy, the laughter, and the unity blossoming all around. "Thank you. I want everyone to feel this magic. It's happening, Clara. You brought this to life," Dr. Lee said, squeezing her shoulder before stepping back to enjoy the show. As evening fell, the atmosphere shifted with a growing anticipation. A collective hush settled in as the old man took center stage. With shaky hands, he placed his fingers on the piano, and as the first note rang out, Clara held her breath. The music that followed was haunting and beautiful, wrapping around every listener like a warm embrace. Clara closed her eyes and felt the notes pulse through her. Each chord carried hints of sorrow and resilience, a melody born from a life lived with determination. When he finished, the crowd erupted in applause, the noise echoing against the walls like thunder, filling Clara with warmth. She realized then that through music, they weren't just celebrating life, they were reclaiming it. Across the room, Jake caught Clara's eye. She smiled, catching the glimmer of pride shining back at her. But amidst the joyous moment, an unshakable thought lingered in Clara's mind: would they be able to maintain this? As the final set concluded and the crowd thinned, everyone was buzzing with excitement, exchanging phone numbers, forging connections, drawing in those who felt the power of music lift them higher, but Clara's heart still felt tethered. She walked over to Jake, who was in deep conversation with Emily. "Did you see them? They came together." "They did," Jake agreed, his excitement palpable. Clara studied the faces mingling around them, each reflective of gratitude and warmth, but even still, the anxiety crept back. What if the support dwindled? What if her illness took center stage once more and overshadowed this magic? "Clara," Jake began, his voice laced with understanding, "you've built something beautiful here. Even if things get tough, remember tonight. You have this whole community behind you." They stood there, wrapped in the afterglow of the night's events, and she knew deep down he was right. She had breathed life into a dream that threatened to fade into the shadows. And with each moment of doubt that resurfaced, Clara felt hope push back, stronger than the fear. "We can do this, together," she said, looking at both of them. As the last hints of daylight faded, Clara envisioned the future they could shape. Together, they would weave music, create laughter, and build a legacy that could sustain, lift, and inspire. And she realized that even if the road ahead trembled with uncertainty, they wouldn't walk it alone. That night, steered by the unbreakable bond of community, Clara stepped boldly into the unknown, believing with all her heart that they could carry this light forward. This was just the beginning. Now, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Every click helps spread this powerful inspiration. Comment your reactions and feelings about the ending, your opinions matter so much. And for the love of all things uplifting, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait not even one more second to share, only true fans understand the importance of lifting each other up.